Act 1. The Order. To understand the order, you have to understand the man who gave it and the 6 weeks that made it possible. By April 2026, the war with Iran was the largest American operation since Iraq. It had a name, Operation Epic Fury. Within days, Tehran's supreme leader was dead in a decapitation strike. His son, Mojtaba, had inherited a country in rubble. The Strait of Hormuz, an open waterway and shipping route from the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, and one of the world's most strategically important choke points, was decidedly closed by Iran's threat to use force against any vessel caught in its waters. Oil had nearly reached $200 a barrel, and in Islamabad, peace talks quickly fizzled out as no compromise was met. Through all of it, President Donald Trump spoke the way he always had, in real time, in capital letters, to 200 million followers. April 6th, we can bomb the hell out of them. April 7th, 2:14 in the morning, the post that stopped the world's breath. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. Asked hours later if he'd take it back, he leaned into the microphones and shrugged. I'm fine with it. He had given Tehran until 8 o'clock that night, a deadline posted like a countdown clock. An order is not a post. It is a sequence, a briefcase, an officer, a code read aloud and confirmed, a chain of ordinary men who each in turn could have said no. At 8:01 Eastern Time, not one of them did. Act 2. First Light. The first thing the world noticed was that Iran went quiet. Not jammed, not censored. In 90 seconds, a nation of 90 million people simply stopped broadcasting. The last frames anyone would ever get were ordinary. A wedding live stream in Tehran, a boy filming his dinner in Isfahan, a soccer match in Qom, and then a white so total it blew out the censors. Then nothing. There were more than a dozen. Warheads many times the size of Hiroshima over Tehran, Isfahan, Qom, Natanz, Mashhad. Cities 3,000 years old, erased inside a single minute. The first night's estimates put the dead past 4 million. By week's end, past 9. Numbers the mind refuses, so the mind reaches instead for the images. And the images came. Within minutes, the fragments were all over the internet. The flash caught from an airliner window over the Gulf. The shockwave rolling across a desert highway. The columns of fire stacked along the horizon like a mountain range that hadn't existed that morning. They tore through Facebook, through TikTok, through Telegram faster than any government could pull them down. 1 billion people watched a civilization end on the same screens they used for cooking videos. Prime ministers learned of it from the same feed as did doom-scrolling teenagers. One clip, a man on a rooftop, the last 2 seconds before the light, became the most watched video in human history before the sun came up. By midnight in New York, everyone alive understood the same thing at once. The single promise the species had made to itself, never again, was finished. And it had gone out live. Act 3. The Ground. There is a phrase the military uses, Ground Zero. And for the first time in 80 years, the world needed it again, in the plural. Where Tehran had been, a city of 9 million, there was a plain of glass and ash under a sky the color of a bruise. The blast had not just killed, they had erased the machinery of help. No hospitals, because the hospitals were gone. No rescue, because the rescuers were among the dead. The wounded, and there were millions, walked out of the ruins in every direction, toward borders already closing against them. Radiation does not respect a map. Within days, the fallout was all over Pakistan, over the Gulf, over the oil fields, carried on the wind toward India and Central Asia. Doctors in Karachi and Baku and Dubai described wards that filled faster than they could be counted, patients whose sickness had no treatment, only a timeline. And still the phones worked at the edges. The footage kept coming, not the flash now, but the after. The shapes on the roads, the children in the border camps, the man searching a field of rubble for a house that no longer cast a shadow. The world could not stop watching. It had never been able to look away from anything, and it could not learn to now. Act 4. The world reacts. By the time the clouds cooled, the question had already changed. It was no longer what had happened to Iran. It was who was next. In Moscow, within the hour, Russian nuclear forces went to their highest alert since the Cold War. Russian President Vladimir Putin called the strike a crime against the human species and did not say what it would do about it, which frightened people more than a threat would ever have. In Beijing, China froze. Markets, ports, statements, and quietly moved its own arsenal, watching an American president cross the one line everyone had assumed was uncrossable. What else then was possible? Brussels convened and condemned and found it had no power to undo a single second. The UN Security Council met while the seat of a nation that no longer functionally existed sat empty behind its nameplate. Israel braced for whatever retaliation a headless, burning Iran might still manage through its surviving proxies. And in the Strait of Hormuz, a fifth of the world's oil sat under the guns of a war with no more rules. Markets did not fall, they stopped. Trading halted on every major exchange. Gasoline tripled overnight. In 100 cities on 6 continents, people poured into the streets, some in grief, some in rage, some simply to not be alone if the sky opened again. Governments that had spent decades pretending the weapons were theoretical now explained live where the shelters were. And in Washington, President Trump posted again. Act 5, the morning after. There is no returning from some mornings. For 80 years, the bomb had been the thing that did not happen. Its power was in its silence, the shared, terrified agreement that no one would ever be first again. On the night of April 7th, that agreement died in Tehran. Not the weapons, the taboo. And a taboo, once broken, is only a habit waiting to be repeated. The world that woke up on April 8th was not at peace and not at war. It was somewhere new and worse, a place where the unthinkable had a precedent, and every capital city in the world that owned a warhead now did the math again. Deterrence had rested on a single word: never. That word was gone. What replaced it was a question every leader now carried into every room. If it could be done to them, why not to us? And why not first? But the thing that ended that night was larger than a country. It was the fragile, decades-long bet that human beings, given the means to end themselves, would choose not to. We had made that bet in 1945, and we lost it on a Tuesday, over a deadline, in 9 words typed after midnight. The images are still out there. They always will be. Somewhere tonight, a child who is not yet born will find them, and ask the only question that matters. How did we let it happen? And the hardest part of the answer is this: we did not look away. We watched it happen, live. And then we scrolled.